City Manager Clarence Bundy giving us a last interview before he leaves, which will be Sunday. Clarence, thank you for giving us a few moments for a kind of time to look back and look at the future too.
I'm glad to have the opportunity, and I appreciate Channel 18 coming to me to get my final thoughts before I leave the community in the capacity that I'm in at the moment.
What are you thinking about? I mean, today it's a holiday in the city, so it's not a lot of people around. What is it like?
Typical life of a city manager or county administrator is to work nights, weekends, and holidays. It goes with the territory. About a third of the job I could probably do at home with an email connection and access to a telephone, and the rest of the time is face-to-face meetings. So really, nights, weekends, and holidays is a time to do the thinking, to read material, and actually to get ready for the following week.
Right. What has the last few weeks been like? I know you've been having some parties and get-togethers with folks and so forth. Are you regretting it a little bit?
I have mixed emotions.
Yeah.
It's exciting to go into a new opportunity and to move into a larger population and to have the new challenges of learning a new job. But it's also bittersweet, on the other hand, to leave the people that I respect and work with, and to leave a community that I was born and raised in, and one that I love and really respect the people in.
Right. I remember several years back, you were coming to me saying, Charles, people don't quite get the budget crisis that's coming at us. And you were trying to stress to me that we had to get ready for some of the things we've seen. That had, to lead a community through a downcline in the economy and downcline in population, it's not an easy thing. You cannot end up being a popular guy after all that. What's it been like?
It's been very challenging. Everyone in this community, they're competing for limited resources. We only have a finite amount of money and resources to go around. It's extremely tough to make these budget decisions that we've been in and year after. If you look at job loss alone, Charles, around the last 10 or 11 years, the Martinsville-Henry County area has lost over 17,000 jobs. That takes its toll on the resources that are here, and it leaves people wanting more resources that are scarcely available, and it's tough making these budget decisions.
Right. A lot of times when I talk to some of the critics of city government, they say the school system always gets what they want. Do you believe that?
To some extent, I know I've heard that same thing. Yeah. Do they get more resources? That's for one's interpretation. Our school budget, I think, is a really good school budget from the school perspective. They do have a lot of resources going at them. And in contentious times, when city employees look at the benefits that the school employees are getting, and the taxpayer may look at the amount the school budget is funded compared to what the state requires, from that perspective, it could be perceived that way.
How do you perceive it?
How do I perceive it? I think our school budget is a very modest school budget. I think we put an abundant amount of resources into our schools. It's not that education is not important. It is extremely important. But I do think there's been an inequity in some of the benefits between the city employees and the school employees, and that leads to some various opinions about how people feel about the amount of resources going into the schools.
Right, and sometimes I think that made you unpopular with some of the city employees, the utility workers and things like that, because they haven't had a raise in a while and you've had to face them.
Exactly, and that's common. The administrator or the manager in local government, they're the ones that's caught in the middle between the policymakers' decisions and that of the employees. And a lot of times we, the city, having to make tough budget decisions, those decisions a lot of times are unpopular with the employees, and it makes it hard to go back and work with those employees and ask them to do more when they haven't had the pay raises in 4 years.
Has that been tough for you?
It has. It's been very tough to deal with, but I have to say, our employees, if you took the majority of the employees and you looked at them on an individual basis, they're real troopers. They have made the most of the situation they've been in, and you really haven't heard them screaming a lot for more money. It's not about more money. It's about fairness.
Do you agree with them?
To some extent, I do.
Yeah.
I really think that when you look at government employees, a government employee is a government employee at the local level. I do believe in equity and balance, and I think that things should be distributed in such a manner.
Right. I think if you study like the administration at Martinsville City, there's some of I think they are the highest paid in the state. And for when I see the other city employees, they look at that and like, well, my goodness, At what point do we get some equity? So, I mean, it is a problem for the future city manager, don't you think?
I'm sure that will be an issue that
One of
will
the biggest
continue into the future. Yes, I think it will be a challenge.
Right. Another thing, sometimes some of the critics say that public safety and the fire department get abundant funding. And the fact that you used to work in public safety. Any reaction to that?
I have a few points I'd like to mention there.
Okay.
I heard one of the state delegates in the House of Delegates tell me one time there are no stronger lobbyers than school teachers, the state police, and public safety officials. And I believe that. That's really true. And I'm not saying anything adverse against the school system or any of the school employees. I'm not. Education is extremely important. It's the school board's mission and the school administration's mission to get all they can get to better their employment opportunities and also to offer a better education for the citizens. And then compare that to public safety. That's no different. The police chief, the fire chief, and so forth, they should advocate and try to get what they can for their employees and the resources they need to provide that service. Yep. Public safety is probably the largest slice of resources that we provide locally, followed by education coming in there very closely behind that.
Right. What was the best decision you made as city manager?
The best decision as the city manager, I certainly think one of the best projects that I have been a part of here has been our landfill project, where we're turning our methane into electricity. That is clearly a very good strategic decision that we made that will substantially lower our operating cost in the electric department by about $500,000 a year.
Right. What was the worst thing? What was the worst decision you made as manager?
The worst decision that I've made as a manager, that's a good one. I have never really thought about that. There are personnel matters that have been very difficult to deal with, and that's true in any management job that we have. And I can't really put my finger on one particular bad decision. There's always an opportunity for us to Monday morning quarterback and look at things that may have went wrong or we had additional information on. But I feel good about the decisions that have been made here in the community in the last 4 or 5 years. And I know that the city is being left in fairly good shape as I go to my next challenge.
Right. How about things we need to improve on?
Things that we need to improve on. My answer to that is pretty clear. When you look at the job loss in our community, you look at the loss in population, you look at diminishing tax base and diminishing resources from the state government. What I would like to leave behind is my opinion of what to do to help with that would be to, A, invest in projects that return a dividend.
Like?
A good example of that would be the investment that the city and county has partnered in to develop the Commonwealth Crossing Business Center. Developing that site down there, that's a good example of an investment in the future that will yield a higher tax base for our city taxpayers. One of the other pieces of advice that I leave behind is to live within our means, and that is not to spend any more than we take in. Another facet of what I would like to suggest would be to invest in our employees. Our employees are clearly on the front line of the service that's provided in local government, and without employees, the job can't be done. And good examples of that would be our employees here look at what's being paid in the market, they look at the benefits that are being given out in the market, and they look at that total employment benefit package. And right now we're seeing a high turnover in the police department. We've seen it in the electric department recently and some of our public works employees. So if we wait until we got a serious problem, and then look what we'll have, we're losing our experienced work hands and having to train people, bring them in possibly at higher salaries than what they were making, and then we'll sacrifice a service that's been provided. And then the last thing that I'll say is I think that the city needs to adequately put money aside to replace its capital needs. And those capital needs are basic items like police cars, fire trucks, and even the infrastructure that allows us to provide our services such as electricity, water and sewer, and garbage.
All right. Let's talk a little about the county and city, because you know, during my years of covering events here, it's always it's kind of touch and go. People always are watching the relationship, how you guys are getting along. And of course, merger comes up from time to time. You used to work in the county, so you've worked both governments. Is the tension there that the public sometimes senses?
I really don't think so right now, and it goes back and forth.
Yeah.
I've seen situations where it has been contentious between the city and county, but a lot of that has to do with the way the state government is set up in Virginia. We all compete for those resources neighbor to neighbor. A lot of times the county has got to make the decision that's in the best interest of the county, and then the city has the same responsibility, and they may be in conflict with each other. But I really think the relationship between the city and county governments is really good right now, really at an all-time high, the way I've seen that.
One time we know that it was probably pretty bad is when the county purchased the social services building there and pretty much ruined y'all's, your business park there. I mean, in the way from y'all's eyes. I mean, I talked to a lot of people in the city and the city government, and they felt like that was a real slap in the face. You remember that and reaction to that?
I remember when it happened. That was right before I became the city manager.
Yeah.
And I will point out a lot of good things that the city and the county are doing together that people forget about sometimes.
Right.
Look at the successful programs that we have in place. The 911 Center, it's a joint effort. The Department of Social Services that you mentioned, the Health Department, the regional transit system that we have in place, and the library resources. And then most recently I mentioned the development of the Commonwealth Center and the revenue share lots.
Right. But let's go back to that event. That was a defining point in the relationship, don't you think? I mean, that had a lot of bad vibes were coming from that. Can we agree on that?
There's no doubt. There was controversy over that decision.
Yeah.
But the important thing is that both communities have moved forward from that, and things are not in a situation as such now, and we have a lot of positive momentum going for us.
Right. Do you think the city reverting to a town? Is that something the leaders need to look at in the next 10 years?
That always needs to be an option, Charles. What is the optimal government structure for the city of Martinsville? Our leaders will be missing the mark if they don't always look at that. Do I think the city needs to revert to a town to survive? The answer to that is no, as long as good business decisions are being made by our elected officials. If they balance revenues and expenses, they invest in those projects that return an investment. If they invest in capital projects to allow us to continue providing our service and take care of the employees, all those things means a successful city. But if those decisions are sacrificed for politics or just not made, then reverting to a town may be the city's best model. But that will have to be determined based upon the amount of resources that are available at the time and what those elected officials think that our citizens want.
Right. Amp Ohio. Do you feel good about those decisions that you made?
Absolutely. Every part of the decision has not been the way the city expected it to be. But as far as the cumulative package of those decisions, that was truly the best decision to make.
Right. And because the critics say we're getting into an energy deal that is going to go into 40 years, the whole energy picture might be a whole different deal. What do you say to those critics?
I say, first of all, let's think about a long-term commitment and decide if that could be a good thing or a bad thing. Let's go back to the late 1800s. Our forefathers had the vision to build the Martinsville hydroelectric dam. They chose to go into that project alone. No other locality partnered with the city of Martinsville to make that happen. And over 100 years later, that hydroelectric dam is still in service. It's still providing power to the citizens of Martinsville, and it's saved our taxpayers millions and millions of dollars. That was a long-term risk. Buying electricity, there are long-term risky decisions, and with risk you make good decisions, and sometimes you wish you could make a different decision based upon having more information over time. But as far as buying electricity goes, it's either do nothing and be at the mercy of the market, which is not the way to go, or you take the bull by the horns and you make decisions to where you can control your destiny, you diversify your risk, And that way, if one project does not go your way, you have other projects that can make sure that you have fair and reasonable electric rates.
Right. The next question I'm going to ask you, I'm going to probably get a no comment, and I understand it because it's in the middle of a lawsuit, but the lawsuit that you're involved in with the former fireman, any comments on that?
No, any legal matter, whether it be personnel or
Yeah.
any other litigation matter for the city, you know,
Okay.
the answer is no comment.
I'm just doing my job on asking you the question.
I understand.
All right. Your next job, Amherst County. Are you excited about it?
I am very excited about that.
Tell me why.
Well, it's a fairly good-sized county. It's about 100 square miles larger than Henry County. Population is about 35,000 compared to around 14,000 Martinsville residents. They have a very aggressive capital improvements program. They have very clear goals and initiatives, and they have a lot of good programs in place that I am looking forward to being a part of, and I'm ready to go there and make a difference in Amherst County.
Right. Well, I know you. This is always. I know you've taken this job to heart, and it's. And you were telling me that even when you went on vacations, you still are doing paperwork or dealing with problems. I mean, being a city manager is not as easy as it looks, is it?
No, it's not. What people focus on a lot of times is they see a big salary,
Yeah.
and they say, well, you know, my goodness, that amount of money is ridiculous. But I can tell you there are very tough decisions that have to be made. It's a job to where you have to take a lot of the task home with you, and those decisions sometimes affect family status.
Yeah.
They affect time away from family, and there's always emails, phone calls, reading documents, and doing work at home. But it does go with the territory, and I understand that and respect that.
Right. Your last thoughts, last thing. If you could talk to the citizens, what would you say?
Here's what I would tell our citizens. This is a great place to live. And people may ask, well, why are you leaving if it's a great place? That happens. Turnover happens in these management jobs. It's just the way it is. But I like for people to focus on the good things that we have going for us in Martinsville, Henry County. You look at a great quality of life from our museums that we have, our trails, our recreation amenities, and then I will say, as far as the future goes, we, Martinsville, Henry County, are really positioning ourselves well for the future. And I like to close that out with talking about economic development. 22% unemployment. Nobody likes that. Down to the 16% range right now. That is unacceptable. But I will say and reassure the citizens of Martinsville, Henry County that the right people are in place and they're truly trying their best to make a difference in economic development. Mark Heath, his organization, he has great employees. He is working a very aggressive economic development recovery plan. And if the people will have faith in Mark Heath and the EDC Board of Directors, they will see some jobs come back, but they have to be patient and realize that the jobs are not going to come back overnight.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Good luck to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
All right.